Feels like an awkward silence.
It is an awkward silence. Where all the people have been very good and arrived on time. I think in the next time I
Yes.
attend a webinar, I'm turning up 2 minutes late.
I love it. I love that you're all here. We're just giving a few minutes for others to join, and then we're going to get started.
The one thing I can see, Kris, is it's raining where you are, but it's warmer than here. So
Yes, you're right. It's raining. I have a sea of yellow trees outside my window that are just gorgeous. I imagine with the rain and cold that's coming, though, we're going to see a lot of those leaves fall this weekend.
well,
All right. What do you say? Should we get this thing started?
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Death of the PDF webinar. We're so glad you are here with us. It is the beginning of a new era in document management for manufacturers, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. So let's kind of jump in. Before we get started, I wanted to briefly introduce Rick Page, who is here with me today. Rick is the Director of Sales and Marketing at Bluestream. For those of you that don't know Bluestream, Bluestream provides various tools and processes that help manufacturers meet their requirements for creating, managing, and delivering content. Rick has worked with component content and document management solutions for over 20 years, and I'm delighted he's here to share his knowledge and experience with all of you. So, hi, Rick.
Hi, Kris. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here. And I'm Kris Harrington, the Chief Evangelist over at GenAlpha Technologies. We work with original equipment manufacturers to help them deliver a better customer and dealer experience. And we do this by providing online product configurators, warranty and RMA solutions, e-commerce, and interactive parts manuals. So again, thank you all for joining today. And let's run through the agenda to get you familiar with what we're going to talk about. The question for today is, are PDFs dead? We're going to talk about that. And why should you care? Well, what's changed and why should you care? What's new? And how can you enhance your own documentation? So with that, let's dive in. The first question we were really asking is, are PDF formats dead? I think somebody had mentioned to me earlier this week, Rick, that Adobe might not be very happy with us for having this conversation and posing it in this way, but we'll kind of round out this at the end. But let's first talk about the advantages of PDFs. And I found this quote from the University of Wisconsin-Madison that I thought was really summed up the way that PDFs have proliferated kind of our lives, especially our working lives. So PDF files have become the informational currencies used to run many organizations. They are easy to make. They're easy to make. They're easy to share. Most of us have done, made a PDF in our lifetime, in our jobs, and probably thousands of them for many of you that are on this call today. Anyone can use a word processing application such as Microsoft Word or an online document editor such as Google Docs and save their work as a PDF. And that's why it really has become so easy. And by doing so, the appearance and layout of text, type font, and any graphical elements such as illustrations and photographs will be preserved in the file. They're handy to use as email attachments to distribute flyers, handouts, or manuals. And for those of us that are in the world of documentation, PDFs have been really prolific in the way that we have made our manuals. However, and this is really the premise of our discussion today, PDF should not be used to present content that users will read online. And this is really critical for us to think about for all of us working in the space. So let's talk about some of the drawbacks of PDFs. Really, users dislike PDFs. There's research that documents the dislike for PDFs. They're not mobile friendly. Content is more challenging for web users to edit and reuse. And in fact, if they have to edit, often they have to have editor tools that have a cost to the user. They're not designed for reading on screens. Really, all PDFs were optimized for printing. And by printing, it's much easier to read. But imagine, and we have all done this on our mobile devices, where we have to pinch and move the document around. It's very challenging from a mobile device. It's difficult for web users to navigate when seeking specific information. Many of us on the call might know the function Control F, where we can find information in the document and it will highlight all of that. But that's not an intuitive function that is known and understood by everyone. There are limited metrics about how much web users are engaging with a PDF. So for those of you that put content onto your websites, if you're attaching the content as a PDF, you may understand how many clicks went to that PDF, but if it was actually read, the time on a page is virtually impossible to understand if you haven't put the content into a different format on a website. So the analytics are really key. PDFs are bad for your search engine, so your SEO strategy. So for those of you where keywords have defined some of the activities that will help you drive the right traffic to your websites and to provide the information that you know is useful to customers, to dealers, to employees, to others, maybe it's technical service personnel, that SEO and that search capability is very difficult with a PDF. And I know this personally in our own business at GenAlpha on our website, it's very easy to overlook when you are maintaining content. So imagine when you do put that PDF attachment onto your website, there are many of us who frequently go onto our sites and we work hard to make sure that information is fresh on our website. But what we're often missing is that attachment and making sure that the attachment has been refreshed and the information is valuable and up to date. So, we go back to the question, why should we care? Why is this even important? And I want to share some statistics with you regarding the adoption and use of connected devices around the world, because I think this will really shed some light on why it is so important that we think beyond a PDF. In November 15th of last year, we crossed the 8 billion mark for total population globally. So there are more than 8 billion people today. And just so you know, the information I'm presenting to you here is from July of this year. If we look at the number of unique mobile phone subscribers, 69% of the population, or more than 5.5 billion, are mobile phone subscribers. So people have devices, they have it in their hands, and they're looking for information in their hands. If we go further to understand how many individuals are using the internet, it's greater than 5 billion, or 64% of our population. If we go further, for those of you that have social media strategies for your documentation and other materials, there are 4.8 billion people in the world who have social media identities, or 60% of our global population. So this is the reason why this is important to us and why we have to understand this information. I also want to mention that, our world is changing. And I took this specific slide from Kenneth Swope. He's the Senior Manager, Enterprise Interoperability Standards at Boeing. And he gave a presentation late last year that said, is digital transformation the end of PDF? And it's actually publicized on the PDF Association's website. And as part of his presentation, he said, the world is changing and the fourth industrial revolution is underway. So if we think about the first industrial revolution, which was mechanical, the second, which was electrical, the third, where we started using electronics and IT to further automate. What this is telling us is we are in that fourth industrial revolution, which is digital, really using digitally connected and having an end-to-end digitally connected enterprise. So I hope that this kind of lays the groundwork to why it's important that we explore alternatives to PDF as we move forward. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Rick Page, who's going to talk to us about what's new.
But there we go. So thank you for that. So alternatives to PDFs, they're not new. You know, the first thing that I want to say is this is not a new subject. We've been talking about the death of PDF for a long time. And there are alternatives out there. So we've got our web-based alternatives, and they may come in the way of portals. You know, everyone's familiar with portals now. Actually, the picture in the background is a portal from one of our customers. Or they're applications based. So, you know, we're all familiar with help files within any applications that we use. We may not use them, but they're normally there. Press F1. We'll normally pull up a help system. And that's fine. And, you know, but they're not very good, to be fair. I mean, no one uses help systems, or very few use help systems with things like Microsoft. Typically, you search Google if you're trying to do something in Microsoft and you're not sure how it works. Sorry, Microsoft, but it's true. But as we move forward, particularly within manufacturing, there's other things now that are coming into training people and sharing information. There's augmented reality. This is driving a whole new technology to make things better, which is really exciting. And then there's standards that are driving these changes as well. Now, some of you may be familiar with the S1000D standard. It's used for military equipment and aviation at the moment. And one thing that S1000D brought along many years ago, it's a very old established standard, is this idea of IETMs, interactive electronic technical manual. So within certain industries, they've been pushing the boundaries and using more intelligent ways of distributing information for a long time. But there's now emerging standards, and this follows on really from where Kris is talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Part of that is the smart factory, which was driven by a thing called Industry 4, which came out of Germany. Germany was very early adopter for structured information because they're a big manufacturing country. As a result of European legislation, the manufacturers realized the only way they could meet the requirements was to bring more control into the documentation. But that's led on to more emerging standards. VDI 2770 is a new standard, which is all linked to the smart factory about how you exchange data between machines and how you structure your content for the best way. And then we get IIRDS, which is another one that comes out. It actually stands for Intelligent Information Request and Delivery. The idea that you're sending context-aware information. So if someone has a problem using a piece of equipment, you're delivering the solution for that problem. You know, if it pulls up an error code on a device, what do I do about it? And it's sending that information, not having to go through lots and lots and lots of paper manuals in order to find your answers. Now, incidentally, I mentioned S1000D. It has been around for a long time, and it gave us various phrases. So it gave us this idea of data modules. So it's an individual chunk of information. And then information types, which defines what the data module is. S1000D defines 14 different types of data module for different things that you may be doing. And then publication modules, which is where you organize your data modules into a publication. And to manage everything, they came up with this idea called a common source database. You put everything into a database. Now, there's another standard that Bluestream are involved with and is also popular, and that's DITA. So I'm going to talk more from a DITA perspective. It's a newer standard, and it's a much simpler structured standard. I'll try to explain some of the aspects of it as I go through. Plenty to find. You can find lots on DITA if you look, if you don't know about it. If you do know about it, I apologize, but it's some interesting information. So data modules are the same as topics, is what we have in DITA. Information types is a topic type, whereas S1000D will give you 14 different ones to choose from. DITA will only give you 3 to choose from. You've got a concept topic, a task topic, and a reference topic. And we have a DITA map which organizes those topics into a publication. And we have, rather than a common source database, we call it a component content management system, but they're effectively very similar things. DITA was actually an invention by IBM, which was released to the general community in 2005. So it's an open standard now maintained by Oasis. So a little bit more about this. It's about managed modular reuse, in a word. So if you think of an author today, quite often, particularly depending on what they're using to create their content with, they could be spending as much as 50% of their time formatting documents. That's completely eliminated when you move to DITA, or even actually when you move to an XML-based system. So you start saving a massive amount of money. We attend events, we talk to lots of people. I see a lot of people actually using InDesign to create technical documentation. And I use InDesign myself. If I'm designing a brochure, I would create that in InDesign or a newsletter. But it's a very time-consuming thing to do. Move into structure, we get away from all of that. So what structure will do, and when you move to XML, what you're doing is you're taking, it separates out the content from the formatting. So we have a great phrase within sort of our industry where we call it COPE. So you create something once, but you then publish it everywhere. In fact, you can also publish to PDF as well. So, and if you wanted to, if we visualize what that looks like, you have here laser pointer. These are our individual modules of content. So a DITA topic makes sense on its own. And so we have these various topics which we've got sat in a component content management system. And then we have our various publications made up of these topics. So in effect, what you have is this topic here is used in multiple different publications in different places. And the advantage of that, there's lots of advantages. One is if you have to do an update, we update this topic, we can then update these 3 publications simultaneously. So if we're localizing these have been translated to many languages, but we're only changing one topic, we only have to update the translation for that one topic, and then we can redo the publication as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about auto generation, and there's different ways of creating content now. So we've got ChatGPT, interesting. We have things like configure price quote systems. We have IPCs, and also I want to touch on video. Now, ChatGPT, great technology, but it's never going to replace, I shouldn't say never. In the short term, it won't replace the jobs of technical writers. It's great technology, but it is, in a way, if you wanted to be rude about it, it's very little more than predictive text. It's very clever predictive text, but the way it works is it's studied terabytes of documents. It's been trained because you have to train these things to understand questions and things. But most companies won't be able to deploy it for much use within their own company. For a start, it requires a massive amount of data with which to start off from. So you have a thing called a large language model, but that has to be so vast that most companies won't have the amount of volume of content for that to work. But there are other ways of creating this content moving forward. So I wanted to touch on this. So configure price and quote rather. So this is actually from a presentation I did with one of our customers. They put this together, and I'm just happily borrowing the slides because a lot of sensible documentation is all about content reuse. So if you can borrow something or reuse something, it makes sense. So they had a configure price quote system. They could choose. They are an online ERP system. You can choose the category, and then you could choose the modules that you actually wanted for your particular deployment. And then this would build a cost estimate and a time estimate and give you a table of contents, which was great. But then what they did, they were a software company, they did this themselves. They thought, well, we still need to create the documentation. At the time, they started out doing this in Word. Originally, they were trying to maintain 360 different modules in Word documents, and then customers started saying, we want this, but not that. So they added in a documentation layer to this. And the result of adding in a documentation layer is now they get a cost estimate, they get a time estimate, but they also get this customized output, which is coming from their data content. So much easier to create the content. Also, if they can create this content, customize output in any language from the localized content that is stored in the component content management system. Now, these are their figures. So their estimates was an 80% time saving on content creation. But obviously, they also picked up on the fact that the consistent updates, the update the topic in one place, and you can update multiple publications from that. A 90% saving in content selection. So rather than having to go through and delete content, you can imagine how it was done in the past with massive Word documents and someone going through and saying, oh, I don't need that. So they take part of this out. And then, oh, I've taken the wrong piece out. So going back and trying to fix everything. And their benefits, no duplications, select it once, up-to-date information, and the dependencies. Part of their system meant that some components were reliant on other components. So you needed to make sure you might not want a particular section, but if that particular another section that you did want was reliant on that section, and that section was still included automatically within the build, so the software still worked. And another thing we see, which links in very well with GenAlpha, is illustrated parts catalog. So we have a system whereby we can bring content from third-party systems, ERP systems, PLM systems, CAD systems, and bring that data into our CCMS. And here we can build an IPC, for example, automatically within here, and then deliver that out to the sort of platform that GenAlpha supply. And then from here, if you've got your IPC, then you've got your order fulfillment going back here. So actually, in this particular case, this is a way of actually increasing revenue and showing that your content and your authoring team are actually creating value for the wider company. It's not an overhead. If you start creating your content more intelligently, delivering it more intelligently, then it starts to help your sales. Delivering better content on the web, for example, means that people spend more time on your website and they find the answers. You know, the bounce time on websites is measured in seconds. It's not measured in minutes. People go to websites to look for something. If they don't find what they want very, very quickly, they move on to something different. So then this content that we're creating should be on the web as well. But I also wanted to touch on video, because I think video is interesting. I mentioned it ever so slightly earlier when I said about help systems and Microsoft. In fact, also using InDesign. I mentioned InDesign. If you're looking for how to do something on InDesign and you're not sure, or Adobe Illustrator, video is probably the best way it's the best way that I've found to find answers. It's much quicker. But there's some facts behind this. So 75% more likely to watch a video than read documents. That's Forrester research. 3M, we process something visually 60,000 times faster than text. I couldn't believe that. I actually had to go back and look that up to actually believe it, and that is genuine. You can search that and you will find the article that talks about it. But memory is another thing. It's quite important. We only remember 10% of what we hear. My wife would say it's somewhat less than that. She'd say it's probably about 5% of what she tells me I remember. We keep 20% of what we read, but 80% of what we interact with. So think about that as how powerful delivering some of your content in video can be. Now this is from a company that we partner with that have some really neat technologies. Think about documents, and then think about data, and think about this modular approach that we have for creating content and then delivering publications. So we've got text and images, we've got these components. You know, we have a component content management system. This is the sort of language that we use, but with text and images. But then think about those components being put into video. So you replace the images with a short video loop. The technology that this company has takes the written text and automatically produces a voiceover. One area of AI that's improved massively over recent years is the delivery of voice. If you remember, Stephen Hawking was known, he had this machine and it was a real robotic voice that he was known for. He actually turned down the chance to change it for something newer that sounded more human. He didn't want that because he'd for years put up with this voice that he had. But nowadays it's very hard to tell the difference between something that's been created automatically by AI and something that's actually a voiceover. Apart from the AI will have less pauses and it will be better paced. So they deliver this technology, marry it up with the video and create the output. Now, because that's an automatic voice delivery, if you need to do that same video, we've separated out here the audio from the media assets. So just do it in German. You've got the text, give me a German version, give me an Italian version. And if you want to know more, contact us or look up Text to Media, who is the company that have this technology. Nice people. And I just wanted to finish my little section here. We've shown you what this looks like on a screen. This is video delivered onto a machine of one of our customers. So in the corner, you've got what this is like to look through in paper. We've all done this paper stuff. Whereas on the left, this is an interactive delivery. So you've got an operator, they've got a problem. Industry 4 is about empowering operators to be more than just button pushers. But in order to do that, you have to give them the information that they need in order to solve the problems that they come across. And you see here the person using the book version, which is made from PDFs. is still trying to find the right page, whereas the person using the screen is now zooming in on the parts to see what's going on. So I'm going to pass back to Kris now.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Some great information there. And for those of you that are with us, please, this would be a great time to enter your questions. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. If you want to enter your questions into the Q&A, we'll be heading there in just a few minutes. But so this really brings us back to the question, is the PDF dead? And, our answer is that in this changing world where accessibility and usability is really important to users, we have to think beyond the traditional PDF. And something that we wanted to kind of leave you with was this acronym, access. So if you can think about your documentation as being easy to access, and we start with accurate, right? Your information needs to be correct. That means make sure it's reviewed by engineering, product management, to really ensure that it is the right information. It needs to be current. It should be the most up-to-date. We all have engineering change notices. We have information that comes through our business. So often we say that physical documentation or static documentation becomes obsolete so quickly. Even after you've created the document and that product leaves the factory, often things are already changing. So we need to make sure that our documentation is current. It should be consistent. This is consistent in the way that Rick just showed you how somebody is looking for information. When they're looking for any information with you, think about how you can create consistency throughout that process to increase the efficiency of the user who is accessing that information. And I would also say, don't forget to be consistent with your brand. Your brand is so critical for people remembering you and ensuring that they're loyal to you and they want to continue business with you long into the future. So your documentation is a representation of your brand as well. That takes us to E, easy to use. Certainly, we want to make sure that it's simple, clean, easy to read, and very easy to use. And I think you've seen some of the value in data and some of that more standard documentation that Rick shared with you. And then we move to searchable. Make sure that people can find the information. In this world where billions of people, over 60% of the population have mobile devices and they're using the internet, we have to have our content be searchable so people can get to it easily. And then finally,
Kris,
go ahead.
Just on that searchable thing, because this is key now.
Yep.
There is so much information on the internet. Google has an indexed. We all use Google, to be fair. Well, 90% of people use Google. YouTube's actually the second largest search engine, I think, now. Yeah. But because there's so much data, it's very hard to find the right data now when we search. It's becoming harder and harder and harder as more and more data is on there. The key to finding things, or one of the real things of helping you find the right thing, is a thing called metadata, which is data about data, which is hidden within the content of the document. And again, that's something that is much more prevalent within the structured content world than the unstructured world. I just wanted to say that. Sorry, Kris.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great points there. And then the final is really structured, and that goes back to all of the benefits that Rick just shared with you in his slide presentation. So really here, if we go to our conclusions, have we seen the end of PDFs? No, not yet. But there are various alternatives and supporting approaches that we want to make sure that you understand are out there. And as you, again, think about the way that people are consuming information today. Don't be left behind with just the standard, the PDFs that we've become accustomed to. And of course, in some areas where we have regulations that require us to produce PDFs, that's okay. We have to meet our regulations, but where can we go beyond to make sure we're meeting the needs of end users? And I will even finish with a quote from the gentleman at Boeing. Again, this was Kenneth Swope from Boeing, who said, "Will digital transformation be the end of PDF?" And he said, "No, but it will be different." So with that, we just want to say thank you and open it up for questions.
I think one last thing I would say on there, just because the machine directive says we have to create a PDF doesn't mean that's the only thing you want to create. You want your users to, you can create the printed version, put it in a corner, and you've met your obligation, but you can deliver better information, or in that same information, in better ways to the people who actually need to consume it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, a question for you, Rick. I would, thank you for describing DITA, because I know a lot of the customers that GenAlpha works with and a lot of the prospects that we call on today, they are not familiar with DITA or have little familiarity with DITA and really aren't using it today. Just a question, do you have any numbers on how much it's being adopted right now, or kind of share what you're seeing? I know it's a new standard.
Well, it's not a new standard. I mean, from a standard perspective, in a way, it's new, but has been around for over 15 years now, and across all industries. So structured content isn't new. If you think how many aircraft are in the sky today, every one of those, all the documentation for the maintenance of that aircraft is created using S1000D. There's not a plane allowed to fly that hasn't got the documentation creating that. So the idea isn't new, but it's filtered in more and more into manufacturing. Within markets itself, within Germany, who were an early adopter of structured content, there's lots of proprietary systems. So XML is a way of creating languages. DITA is just one language set in effect that's very easy and very adaptable. So that's why it's sort of growing in use. So it's gradually pushing out some of the old systems. As the old systems within Germany, for example, the proprietary systems have become dated and no longer properly supported, or can't cope with some of the newer things that are coming through in the modern directives, then more and more people are actually moving over to DITA, and the same in North America as well. And I'm also, we've got customers all over the world within manufacturing as well as within software, as well as in standards and education. So the technology is wide reaching and is adaptable.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I certainly, if you're not connected to Rick and you're listening today, I would certainly encourage you to get connected with him and ask your questions related to DITA, because what I've learned now over the years with respect to DITA is that it can be very transformational, and certainly the results that you shared, Rick, are quite tremendous. We do have another question from the audience here. I don't expect that we'll ever get away from paper PDF, operators manuals. Legal requirement is in parentheses. How do I get to paper ops manuals and friendly web delivery?
But actually, that's back to it's an interesting question as well. I was at a event recently in Stockholm, and the day before the actual conference proper, there was a semi-formal get-together of people, where just a chance for people to meet and throw ideas around. And as a icebreaker, really, someone wrote up on the board, "Our PDF's dead." And we then had spent the next 3 hours discussing why you need PDFs, where you don't need PDFs and everything. So it's really interesting subject. So, but where I mentioned the idea of structure and COPE, this create once, publish everywhere. So I'll take this from a DITA perspective. So with DITA, you have these topics. And if you think of a topic exactly the same as Lego, so you can have give someone a pile of Lego and they could make a house, or they can make a car, or they can make an aeroplane or a boat. Because Lego is reusable, doesn't mind where it's used in a model. A DITA topic doesn't mind where it's used in a publication. So a good same bits of Lego can make completely different things. It was used to explain it very early on. But also with XML, this idea of you create once and publish everywhere. So with DITA, we organize our topics that we want into a thing called a DITA map. And it looks like a table of contents to all intensive purposes. But what we've got at that point is we've got a lot of DITA topics in the right order. There's a part that comes with DITA called the DITA Open Toolkit, and that allows us to transform and publish that table of contents into multiple formats. So we can do this simultaneously. So from that DITA map, I can simultaneously create web help, HTML help, a PDF, a Word document, content ready to go into InDesign if I wanted to do, or numerous other things. And I can do that with the same map by pressing one button. So that's how you can do this multi-channel delivery.
Yeah, that's great. I love the Lego example. So for all of us that love playing with Legos, it really helps give you an idea of that reusability. Another question from our audience: how much do you see OEMs linking a parts reference in a service manual? Can PDF support that, and does DITA?
Well, we do some clever things. I didn't want this to be a sort of a Bluestream thing. This is sharing information and ideas, but
Yeah.
this will sound a little bit corporate, for which I apologise in advance. It's not what I'm trying. We're quite unique in so much as we understand bills of materials. So within our system, we can handle bills of materials and use the information from that to build things like IPC. So DITA can support various things. But the other consideration really, so you can do these links and manage it within DITA. But the other thing to remember or think about is the machines we're talking about that need big documentation have a lifespan of, it's not FMCG, it's not fast moving consumer goods. These are things that are going to be around for many years. One of the drivers for structure originally, it addresses such things as systems used to create content don't last as long as the device that they're documenting. Ships are a great example, because if you look at the Royal Navy, I'll take from an English perspective, have just launched two giant aircraft carriers, which they haven't got enough planes for, which is a different subject entirely, because they're not being delivered yet. But these aircraft carriers have got a lifespan of 30 years or more. And we need to think about, how do we maintain the documentation for 30 years? Because how many people there's lots of people on this call, and I'm guilty as well, but how many people here who will ever watch this video has taken digital photos that they can no longer access because the format in early digital cameras isn't now supported? They brought a camera, took some pictures, great. I've got baby photos I can't access. So that's another thing that structure will address. You know, the idea of XML is actually human readable. So if all else fails, you can print it out and you can understand what it's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would even answer on the GenAlpha side, you know, when we repurpose data that comes from a content management system and we make it available online, you can go into a bill of materials, you can go to the specific part and you can get where used information from that, you can get instructional documentation from that. And those can be provided in multiple formats. If a PDF is the way that it exists today, great. But as we're talking about, if there's so much data in PDFs that goes underutilized because it doesn't come out into another format. There are other formats we can present that information in as well. So certainly when it comes to the delivery of information and references to all kinds of information, I know we have that in the online capability where users can access it from wherever they are, as long as they're in a Wi-Fi area. So this technology does exist. It's really meeting with companies that can help you move from where you are to where you want to be in the future. All right. I don't see any other questions here, Rick. Any other final comments or thoughts from you?
No, I apologize. We've run over slightly.
Yeah, that's all right. It was great. Good discussion.
Thank you very much, everybody who's attended from my side, and I'll pass you back to Kris.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will be sending a copy of this to all of you who have attended. And additionally, for those of you who are watching this after who registered, thank you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to follow up with either Rick or I. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.